There is a kind of tiredness that sleep does not fix. It is the tiredness of being the person who always says, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." The person who solves, carries, adjusts, absorbs, and keeps going. The person everyone describes as strong. And yet behind that strength, there is often something much quieter. A fear, not of hard work, not of responsibility, but of being the one who needs something back. Because for many people, asking for help does not feel simple. It feels expensive. It feels like exposure. It feels like stepping onto thin ice and pretending your body is not already bracing for the crack. And if that reaction lives in you, this is not because you are broken, dramatic, or incapable of trusting people. It is usually because your mind learned a lesson early. A lesson that sounded something like this. When you need too much, people pull away. When you are overwhelmed, you become inconvenient. When you are hurting, you may not be met with comfort. You may be met with silence, annoyance, dismissal, or distance. So, you adapted. You got good at containing yourself. You became efficient with pain. You learned how to function while carrying more than you should. And over time, that adaptation stopped feeling like a strategy and started feeling like your personality. That is where so many people get stuck. They do not just avoid asking for help. They build an identity around being the one who does not need it. The reliable one, the composed one, the one who can be counted on, the one who keeps the room stable. And from the outside, that identity looks admirable. It often is admirable. But internally, it can become a prison. Because once your self-worth is tied to being self-sufficient, support no longer feels comforting. It feels threatening. If you let someone help, then who are you for that moment? If you admit this is too much, what happens to the image you worked so hard to maintain? That is why many highly capable people do something strange. They say they want support, but when support appears, their body resists it. A friend offers to listen, and they minimize. A partner asks what is wrong, and they say, "It's nothing." A coworker offers to take one task off their plate, and suddenly they feel defensive instead of relieved. This is important to understand. The issue is not always whether help is available. The issue is whether your nervous system experiences help as safe. And for a lot of people, it does not. Psychologists have studied a version of this for years. One of the clearest findings is that people consistently underestimate how willing others are to help when asked. In other words, many of us are walking around assuming our needs are heavier to other people than they actually are. But the hard part is this: information alone does not undo conditioning. You can know, logically, that trustworthy people exist. You can know that healthy relationships include reciprocity. You can know that no one earns love by being endlessly useful, and still feel resistance the moment you are the one who needs care. Because logic speaks to the mind. Old relational pain speaks to the body, and the body is often louder. This is why the pattern is so exhausting. You are not only carrying your present-day responsibilities, you are also carrying an old vow in the background, a vow that says, "I will not put myself in the position of being let down again." That vow can make you incredibly productive. It can also make you profoundly lonely. And loneliness does not always look like isolation. Sometimes it looks like being surrounded by people who love you, while none of them know how deeply tired you really are. Because you have become fluent in looking okay. You answer messages, you show up, you meet deadlines, you make jokes, you ask other people how they are doing, and all the while, your inner world is saying, "Please notice, please slow me down, please ask again." But when someone gets close, you retreat. That retreat is not random. For many people, giving feels safer than receiving. Giving creates structure. Giving creates purpose. Giving keeps you in motion. Giving allows you to be valuable without having to be visible. Receiving does the opposite. Receiving asks you to stay still long enough to be seen. It asks you to trust that your worth is not based on performance. It asks you to believe that care can arrive without a transaction attached to it. And if you were not taught that early, receiving can feel almost unbearable. This is why some of the most generous people are also the least able to ask for what they need. They are comfortable being needed. They are not comfortable being held. That dynamic quietly reshapes relationships. At first, it can look beautiful. They are thoughtful, dependable, always there. But over time, something becomes uneven. They keep showing up for everyone else while hiding the cost. They begin to feel unseen. Other people sense some distance, but cannot understand it. Resentment grows in silence. Not because no one cares, but because care was never given a doorway to enter. That is one of the saddest parts of this pattern. The person who longs for support often becomes so skilled at preventing it that their own loneliness starts to look self-created. And then shame joins the story. Now they are not only overwhelmed, they are ashamed of being overwhelmed, ashamed that they cannot seem to ask, ashamed that something so simple feels so hard. But it is not simple when your history is involved. If asking for help once led to rejection, humiliation, emotional neglect, or being treated like a burden, your system did exactly what it was designed to do. It protected you. That protection deserves respect because it probably got you through seasons of life that were genuinely hard. The problem is not that you adapted. The problem is that the adaptation never got updated. It kept running long after the emergency ended. So now it appears in places where it no longer serves you. At work, in marriage, in friendship, in parenting, in burnout, in the quiet moments where you finally sit down at night and realize that no one knows how much effort it took for you to make it through the day. This is also why insight, while helpful, is not enough by itself. You do not heal this pattern through one dramatic realization. You heal it through smaller corrective experiences. Very small ones, smaller than most people think. Maybe it starts with saying, "I'm having a rough day. Can you stay on the phone with me for 10 minutes? Maybe it looks like telling a coworker, "I can finish this, but I could use help prioritizing." Maybe it sounds like, "I don't need you to solve it. I just need you to hear me." That kind of specificity matters because one reason people avoid asking is that help feels huge, vague, embarrassing, too exposing. But a small, clear request is different. It gives your nervous system a manageable experiment. Not a leap, an experiment. And that is where real change begins. Not in forcing yourself to become radically open overnight, not in shaming yourself for being guarded, but in showing your system again and again that support can be survived. And more than survived, sometimes support can actually be clean, calm, respectful, non-invasive. There is another layer here that rarely gets named. Grief. A lot of self-reliant people are carrying grief for the version of themselves who had needs and learned to hide them. The younger self who reached out and was not met. The younger self who became easy to stay loved. The younger self who confused invisibility with safety. Until there is some compassion for that version of you, this pattern can feel strangely loyal because it is loyal. It has been protecting that younger self for a long time. That is why healing is not about attacking your independence. It is about softening the fear underneath it. Your competence is not the enemy. Your strength is not the enemy. The goal is not to become helpless. The goal is to become honest, to be capable and connected, to be resilient and reachable, to know how to carry responsibility without making a home inside emotional isolation. So let's make this practical. If this pattern is yours, here are 3 signs to watch for. First, you feel irritation when someone offers help, even when you clearly need it. Second, you vent indirectly, hoping someone will notice, but shut down when they ask direct questions. Third, you are unusually generous with other people's pain and unusually private with your own. If that sounds familiar, start smaller than your pride thinks you should. Choose one safe person, not the most charismatic person, not the person who gives advice too quickly, the safe person, the one who has shown steadiness, the one who can hear truth without making it about themselves. Then ask for one small thing, not your whole story. One small thing, a ride, a check-in, a listening ear, a little extra time, a little help sorting the next step. Then notice what happens in your body after. not just in the conversation, after. Do you feel guilt? Do you want to over-explain? Do you immediately want to repay them? Do you feel exposed for hours? That awareness matters because it shows you where the real work is. The real work is not only learning to ask, it is learning not to punish yourself after asking. That is the hidden chapter most people miss. And if you are the person who has been carrying too much for too long, hear this clearly. You do not have to earn support by collapsing first. You do not have to wait until your exhaustion becomes visible enough to be believed. You do not have to become unmanageable before your needs count. Your needs count while you are still functioning. They count while you are still smiling. They count before the breaking point. And maybe that is the shift. Not, I should ask for help because it is the healthy thing to do, but I am allowed to be human before I am in crisis. That is a very different sentence. And for some people, it changes everything. Because the deepest healing here is not becoming less strong. It is discovering that being supported does not erase your strength. It makes your strength sustainable. You were never meant to prove your worth by carrying life with your teeth clenched. You were never meant to confuse silence with maturity. You were never meant to be admired for how much pain you can hide. Real strength has room for honesty. Real maturity has room for need. Real peace has room for being held. And that is where a quieter mindset begins. Not in controlling every burden, but in no longer believing you must carry every burden alone. If this spoke to something you have been holding in silence, stay with this channel. At the Quiet Mindset, we do not just talk about healing. We make it understandable, usable, and real. Because sometimes the first sign of healing is not a breakthrough. It is a quieter sentence, one honest request, one moment of letting yourself be seen, and that can change a life.